Okay, all right. First, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I've been waiting so long for this day, so I'm so happy that it's finally here. So I guess I'll just go ahead and talk about my topic, which the title of my thesis was Adding Sand to the Hourglass, a Sweeping Review, Examining the Interplay of Bilingualism and Cognitive Reserve in Persons with Dementia. So before I start, a little bit about me is I am a double major, Honor Sciences and Humanities, and then ASL in English Interpretation. I'm hoping to get my interpreting certification this year, as well as eventually going to school one of these days. I was a French minor as well as a chemistry minor, so my domains of study are like all over the place. Just can't pick one, so I do it all. With that, I wanted to kind of merge the two domains of my interests together, and that's where I came up with this topic, bilingualism and science, putting them together. And that led me to my research question, which is up here: what is the role of bilingualism in cognitive reserve and possible delayed onset for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and Alzheimer's disease-related dementias? So it's super long, so many words in there. But as I was researching a little bit about this topic, I found the topic of cognitive reserve, which is just a descriptor word of people with damage in their brains who are still able to function at a normal level, compared to a normally functioning brain. And so we try to research what we can do to be able to tolerate all of those damages and still be able to function for as long as we can, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us, and just to kind of extend that time that you have. And that's kind of where the inspiration for adding sand to the hourglass came from, just kind of adding the time that you have to your life. So I talked about my language background, but I actually didn't start foreign language in school. So I took ASL in high school. That was my first foreign language class, and then I started French in college. But I actually grew up in a bilingual household, so both of my parents, I'm so happy for them to be here today, but they were born and raised in the Philippines and moved to the United States when they were like mid-20s. And I'm like 21, so that's really scary to think about. But both my grandparents raised them in the Philippines, and when they moved here and had me and my two brothers, my grandparents were here to take care of my older brother and me, and they moved back to the Philippines when I was in elementary school. But I'm very grateful to have had that time with them because, I was growing, I was, so, little Nick, and it's never been a reality for me to be able to go to my grandparents' house for Thanksgiving or whatever. So every time we visit back home, it's I really try to value that time that we have together and just remember, all of those times that we had when I was younger. So my freshman year of college, right before COVID in December, my brother and I, we visited the Philippines to go see our grandparents, and we noticed that my grandfather, on the your left, with little me, he started to show signs of dementia. And I noticed that when I was talking to him, I was 18 years old, I didn't know what Alzheimer's disease was, but I noticed that, our conversations were going in circles, and he didn't know who I was, which, it was a kind of, just weird to take in because, I just remember him, walking around my house telling me to go to bed, telling me to, brush my teeth or whatever. And it was just really weird that, like we had to feed him and we had to remind him to brush his teeth and stuff like that. And that was really the first time that I was exposed to Alzheimer's disease. So we came home 1 week before the bans were placed because of COVID. Yes, because it's next to over there. And I unfortunately last year he passed away. So my mom and I had to take an emergency trip back to the Philippines to attend his funeral in his wake. And I was able to spend more time with my grandmother, who's there on your right, and we noticed that she is now starting to show signs of dementia. And I noticed the same patterns. She doesn't recognize who I am, and she spent more time with me than my grandpa did because he had to go back first when I was in elementary school. And so it's really her that I have a connection with. She would make me breakfast before I went to school and stuff, and it was really, it's hard to see that she doesn't remember me anymore, and she doesn't even recognize my mom anymore. But one thing that I did notice was that it doesn't matter what language I spoke to her in. It wasn't, whether it was English or the Filipino dialect that my parents speak. It's called Bisaya. It didn't matter what language I spoke to her. She would speak back to me in English. And I thought that was really interesting because, she doesn't know who I am, yet how does she know to change languages, and how did she not forget English? How does she still know it? So that's kind of the inspiration behind my paper, and where this came from. And it really, I really wanted to learn more about Alzheimer's disease and kind of what's going on inside my grandparents' bodies, and what it may feel like, or and it's nice to know that that they had that long lengthened time, compared to if they were only to speak one language. So during this process, I learned a lot about research, just like all the other writers. I was able to, the first thing that I learned was it's okay to make mistakes. I really struggled with putting my first draft on the paper, just because, I don't want there to be mistakes. I don't want to show other people my mistakes, sending it in for, to get feedback. But it's okay to make mistakes. You can't correct them if you don't make them. So I just, had to throw something on the paper, get it corrected, to get it going. And, it's really okay to make mistakes, even in a big old work like this that is soon to be published. They all start with mistakes. So that's the first thing I learned. And of course, I also learned a lot about Alzheimer's disease, and I was able to feed my passion of language, and I thought that was really fun, and it really kept me going, just with this reminder of my grandparents. So not only is my paper a contribution to science and language, but it's also a way for me to honor my grandparents, who are so many miles away. So thank you all.